Greetings, everybody, and good evening to you again. My name is Renee Cannon. I'm the pastor of the Temple of Praise Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I'm here again with our CFO, Dr. Walter Simmons, who is also the Associate Dean of the Economic Department down at Carroll University. And we've been tuning in, or rather logging into this space for these last couple of weeks, just working through some financial topics. And today is no different. We're going to be looking at the very important topic of credit. But before we get into this idea of what credit is and what it isn't, I just want to go ahead and bring to us a spiritual nugget for just a moment. I've got the text here on the screen. I'm looking at Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 1. There the Bible says this. It says, "A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, loving favor rather than silver and gold." I'll read it one more time. "A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, loving favor rather than silver and gold." Now, this word credit, when we think about it, in its truest essence, what it refers to is a person's trustworthiness or their character. And whenever potential creditors review your score, what they're truly seeking to ascertain is the amount of trust that should be assigned onto your name. This definition of credit, it intersects with our spiritual lives as well, because the idea of having a name that others can view as trustworthy is something that is of the utmost importance in the Bible. This is why Solomon once said, and we see it in the text below, he said that a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. And the reason he said this is because he understood that a person's reputation, their character, or their credit could open doors for you that silver or gold could never. In fact, when we think about passing through the gates of heaven, most people understand that there is no price for admission. This means that there is no bouncer that you can slip an extra $50 to so that he can let you slip into the VIP section of heaven. But the only way you can get into the kingdom of heaven is through the blood of Jesus and a Christ-like character. On earth, on a much lower scale, this is how credit works as well. For it is through proving yourself to be trustworthy in the financial arena that you are granted access to the necessities that you might not otherwise be able to afford. Now, at this time, we've looked at the Word of God, we want to go ahead and receive Dr. Simmons so that he can lead us out now in this discussion of what credit is. Dr. Simmons, go ahead and take us away.
Well, good afternoon or good night to everyone. And Pastor, here we are again. In the past 2 weeks, we talked about budgets. Last week, we talked about debt. And this week, we are talking about credit. And credit is tied into a debt, also. But this week, we want to focus on what we call credit and the credit score, because we know that, most of us, one way or the other, we need credit. And again, just to go back to the fundamentals, what we are talking about is that because our income is not sufficient to purchase the things that we need, then we get credit, and credit puts us into debt, right? So how do we go about, what's credit all about? What's that credit score, that good old credit score? We know that the credit score is basically a 3-digit number, right? We have a 3-digit number, and it's on a scale from 300 to 850. Now, most of us would like to have what we call an excellent credit score.
Oh, yes.
And Pastor, you see there, so you popped up there, an excellent credit score between 750 and 850. Now, you see the range goes from 300 to 850. You don't want to be in the red. You don't want to be in the very bad or bad. So you see anything below 650, it's not good. You're going to get by, but there are consequences in being in that range. It means that if you are in those ranges, then you'll be paying more for insurance. You'll be paying more to rent an apartment. You'll be paying more when you go to buy a car. So what it means is that borrowing becomes rather expensive if you do not have that credit score. How do you get the credit score? Well, credit agencies, right? We have credit agencies. And in the United States, I would say the three most familiar ones are we have Equifax, we have Experian, and we have TransUnion. And basically, what they do, they're agencies that collect our credit information. And when we say collecting credit information, what does that mean? Well, okay, you borrow money. Have you been paying back on time? Are you timely in your payments and paying back on time? So they take all those, they take your behavior. Remember, behavior matters. Your financial behavior. Are you paying back in a timely manner? So they take that score and they put it in that range between 300 and 550. And believe you me, that score, has consequences. And we can talk a little bit about
Yeah,
some
help
of
us
those.
out if we could slow down just for a second, because I think you're hitting on something that's very important to us, and
Mhm.
that's what difference does this thing make to us. So you said that some of the factors, the timeliness of your payment, whether you paid at all on this thing, these are some things that bear weight upon your credit score. So what is it that happens, as a result of this bad credit score?
Well, very good question, Pastor. What happens if you have a poor credit score? Let's think about it. Now, as individuals, as families, what do? We buy cars, we buy homes, mortgages, we rent homes, right? We buy insurance. Well, when you go to get those things, there is something called interest payment, right? And the interest can be 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%. So you take, for example, your mortgage. You're going to buy a car. You know, over the last 3, 4, 5 years, interest rates were pretty low. So you can get at 2%, 3%. Now interest rates that's coming up a bit. Now, if your credit is poor, I have, I know individuals who they go to buy a car and they are because of bad credit, they are paying double digits. Think of it. Interest rates are almost zero and you're paying double digits. That's 10%, 12%. When indeed you should be paid about 3, 4. If it's a new car, it should be even lower. Insurance on your home. You get that insurance, you have to pay higher rates because of your poor credit. So in a way, and it's Pastor, it's a very interesting thing, because our society tells us that we must have credit.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
I mean, so but that's where we live. So if you must have credit, you know, because if you go to get a loan and you do not have credit, then no one wants to give you a loan.
that's right.
So people they want you to get in debt. So the question is, how do we manage that debt so that it does not become a burden? And we are saying managing your credit,
Hmm.
paying on time, reviewing your credit score. And Pastor, by the way, you
Hey,
can get a free credit score.
okay.
Everyone can get a free credit score. You can use any of the agencies, whether it be Trans Union, Equifax. You can get a free credit score, and I would advise people to review your credit score every year because
Hmm.
there could be debts on there that you don't know about or that's been on there and you haven't been paying. Because remember, that influences. So every year you need to clean up your credit score. Make sure there are nothing on there that you not want to be on.
You know, that thing is it makes sense. I remember one time I thought I put a service on hold because I went off on a deployment in the Navy, and when I came back, I tried to get in contact with the company. They said they couldn't find me in their file, so I went on about my business. Well, 3 years later, some people wind up calling me, telling me that I never put that on hold, and then I actually owed them some money that I
That's
had
right.
to pay. But I probably could have nipped that in the bud, had I chosen to review a credit report, which now I'm starting to see the difference. There's a difference between your credit score and a credit report, because what I'm hearing from you is the credit report actually details what it
That's
is. Yeah,
that's
that
right.
you owed
That's
and
right.
such.
And
Right.
if your credit, right? So let's suppose you have something. Let's suppose you had a bill that you already paid, but it's still showing up on your credit report as unpaid. Well, that can influence your credit score. You can end up with a lower credit score.
Hmm.
So it makes sense to review that credit score every year.
Absolutely.
Because yes, you need to review it. And Pastor, you have some questions too. You said, I mean, even if you are in relationships, you said,
Hmm.
for example, does your credit score affects your spouse credit score? Well, no, they're independent. But remember now, remember, as a married individual, you guys usually may want to take out a loan, joint
Yeah.
loan, or you may want to buy things together. Well, if one spouse has bad credit, then you are basically going to drag down,
Right.
you know, you're going to drag down the overall, ability that you're going to have as a family to purchase things. So I mean, I always tell individuals that, yes, your poor credit score, you get into a relationship and then you want to do things jointly, then it creates problems.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that kind of brings about another question about, how I think I can see how it starts to affect the other family dynamics and such that you have, because, I'm just moving back, but you discussed about having bad credit. What it's essentially going to do is it's going to raise your interest rates on
Correct.
everything you do. So things that are already expensive, they become even more expensive because of your bad credit and such, which winds up being that it puts you out of price range for a lot of things. So for your family, for instance, if your interest rate is so much higher and it's raising the amount of payment that you need to make, you won't be able to drive the car that you think is best for your family. You
That's
may not
right.
be able to get the house that you think is most suitable because of those rates as well. So I'm starting to see that your credit, it doesn't just affect you, but it's going to affect your partner, your children and such, and the standard of your living.
It sure does, Pastor. Especially if let's suppose you're in the market to buy a car. It's good to also shop around because sometimes different auto dealership tap into different credit bureaus.
Mm,
Although they may say, and so when you go, for example, you go to buy a car, you say, okay, where are you pulling my credit score from? Which of them? Because some credit agency may have a lower score or a higher score than you. It's also a good idea to explain. They may ask you, have you had experience paying a bill on a consistent level? So sometimes the credit score is the benchmark, but it's also good to explain when you're purchasing, to negotiate.
mhm.
Sometimes you just can't leave it and say, well, okay, the auto dealership just look at my credit score. And I can say, no, well, look at my payment on my last car purchase. I didn't miss a payment. You know, my credit score says this, but look at what I actually did
Okay.
over the last 3 years. And they would look at that and say, oh, you've never missed your auto payment on your previous purchase. So although your credit score is not that great, maybe we can still adjust your rate from a 3.5 to a 3, or from a
Mm,
3.5 to a 2.5, a 1 point different. So we have to be savvy too, because the credit score is just the benchmark. You
right.
can also negotiate beyond the credit score.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's I didn't or hadn't considered that. Usually when they just come out and say they ran your credit, I just take it for what it is. But I didn't know, that you can show them your personal credit tracking as well. I think that's a very good thing to look at. So in looking at this, for those individuals who are struggling, let's say we're in the bad range or we're not quite where we need to be. Are there any suggestions that you have for people about how to raise the level of your credit?
Well, Pastor, always go back to, people, sometimes people refer to me as like a little budget hack, but I go back to that good old budget.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know how you are spending your money. Income comes in, right? Where is each dollar going? It all takes planning, So if you have bad credit, well, how are you going to fix it? Well, you have to get in there, call your creditors, you know, negotiate with them, start paying your bills on time. Remember, I talked about negotiating.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we just take things at face value. Unsecured credit, like there's secured credit. So you buy a home, right? Then it's secure. You have collateral for the home. Unsecured credit, like credit cards and so on, they're unsecured, secured. That's why the interest rates I don't know of any credit card that has an interest rate below 10%. I, I don't know. Most of them is 15% and up, and most of them are in the 20% range, So they are unsecured. So basically, you can walk away from it.
Right.
Now you're going to get to file bankruptcy and so on. So the point is, though, is that how do you get away from it? It's just a simple thing. You must pay your bills on time.
And that's everything kind of draws back to those very fundamental principles that you were talking about from the very beginning, and having a plan to make sure your money's going where it's supposed to be. When I first started to learn about credit, I had no idea about it all through high school. I didn't go to college after high school and such. I started to learn about it when I was already in the workforce and such, and starting pretty much, like everyone else with zero credit. And the thing that wound up helping me, was starting with that budget. And what I would do, at that time, they would have this thing, the overdraft protection and such, and they would give you a loan that went into it. It was like $500 and such.
Yes.
I would take that little loan. I would spend it, but I would budget it so that I would
Correct.
pay them back. And that little thing helped me to build credit over the years. I was like 26 when I first got my first credit card, but the principle was the same. I was doing everything that I would do with my debit card, but I would do it with the credit card and then pay it off.
That's right.
Making sure I had what I needed and I wasn't going over. Because, of course, once you go over, you start dealing with those interest rates that you were talking about and things like that.
Interest rates, and also, too, paying the minimum is not the best thing. It's not an efficient policy. If you pay the minimum and along with the interest, let's suppose you make a payment. Let's suppose you bought something for about $1,000, and then you're making a minimum payment of, let's say, $20 a month. Mm-hmm. Over a 5-10 year period, the amount that you'll be paying in interest would be far more than the $1,000 that you borrowed. That's why people like to lengthen the payment. The longer you take to pay it, the less you pay per month. But over a period of time, you're paying substantially more. So you kind of have to understand the dynamics of it. Longer payment means your monthly payments are lower. Over a period of time, the amount you actually pay is more. So you want to minimize your debt. So you want to minimize the amount of credit you have. Some people have a lot of credit cards, and they think that there are no magic formulas.
Right.
So that people will tell you all type of things, and you can do this. There are no magic formulas. They said you're going to get credit forgiveness and so on. There is a price to be paid, and we have to manage it. And the way to manage it, I go back to the fundamentals. You take your budget. If you create credit and you have credit, you manage it. And there are lots of credit counseling agencies out there again, like everything else, we create another subcategory of industries to solve the problem of credit.
When the credit,
We
yeah, the
thought,
problem is
right,
simple.
exactly. We do not
Yeah, the
have
formula, it doesn't change.
no,
Yeah,
the fundamental doesn't change.
so you wind up paying somebody to tell you the exact thing that you're saying right now for free.
Correct. And we believe that, when you see all this, marketing and telling you that, zero down payment and you don't have to pay anything. There in economics, we have a term that says there is no free lunch. You
Mm,
know, someone is paying for it, and most
that's
likely
right.
you are paying for it.
Ain't no such thing as free lunch. I like that.
No, there aren't. No. There's nothing really free. Someone is paying for it. Maybe it's not you paying
Uh-huh.
directly for it, but
Uh-huh.
but we like to think when something is free, we think that, oh, I don't have to pay for it. It does not affect me. Not so at all.
Hmm. Can you tell me about this thing called bankruptcy and what that is and what it's about? I've heard people discussing bankruptcy as an option to kind of, alleviate some of the problems that they've had and have a fresh start, so to speak.
Well, Pastor, there is no first start. What it means is that, if you file bankruptcy, and most likely, let's stick with Chapter 7, based on the bankruptcy code. Basically, what it does is that it alleviates you from all your creditors.
Hmm.
But what that means is that for the next 5, 7 years, you know, you can borrow, the status, your reputation is gone. But at that end of the period, so if you can live with that,
Oh,
but just having that on the record, is not a good thing. I think as a responsible Christian, I think, we should avoid bankruptcy as much as possible. If you owe people, you should pay them. You
hmm.
know, and I know there are different circumstances. People, because for example, some people unfortunately have medical bills
Hmm.
that they just can't pay, and they may have to file bankruptcy. So I'm not saying, it's the evil, but there may be cases where you have to because of medical situation. But I'm not talking about those situations. I'm talking about situations where we just consume things that we really didn't need, and we just
Yeah,
feel that just want to get, so we use it as a convenience.
right, right.
And that's what I'm talking about. And I don't think it's the way to go. But we have choices. Social stigma and so on is not much of a taboo anymore. So people are willing to live with that. So, but I think as Christians, we really should try to avoid, really, really try to avoid bankruptcy. And also, some experts out there like the Dave Ramses will tell you that, cut off those credit cards. And my thing is that manage your credit card.
Right.
And that's what I
Yeah.
say.
I think that's more, realistic for most people and such, especially, when you don't have it like that, that credit card becomes a necessity. So it's not about getting rid of it, but it's about,
It's
spending properly, making, and to bring it back to, our basis, that's a spiritual principle that we
correct.
should be enacting, because what we do receive, it does come from God, and we have a responsibility to be faithful in our management of it.
Definitely, Pastor. And I think we have also a spiritual responsibility to repay our debt. So,
Hmm.
you accumulate the debt. You just can't walk away from it. You know, you know, because someone, gave you credit. You used it, so you should arrange to pay it back.
Hmm.
You know, and I think that I don't think it's a good policy or it's a good principle, but I know Christians who do it, but I don't think so at all. You should repay your debt, or
Right.
at least negotiate some type of repayment plan,
Hmm.
and not just walk away from it. You know.
That's right. And that brings us about to time. Do you have any, parting words about credit or any other things that you would like us to hear that
Well,
we may
Pastor, I like what you
know
said.
about?
I think if you do not manage your credit, you become a slave to it. Because I'm telling you, it remains. So, for example, things such as our system is very. You can walk away from certain things. You could walk away from your home. You can, because the bank will just take it back.
Hmm.
You know, you can walk away from your car payments. They'll take back the car. You'll get a reputation. But there are certain loans, for example, like student loans. You can't walk away from it. It stays with it stays with you forever. You,
Right.
so certain things you can walk away from. And I know people who have walked away from the mortgages, walk away from rental payments, walk away from credit cards, and they say, "Hey, what's going to happen to me? The most that's going to happen, I'm going to get bad credit. I can live with that for the rest of my life."
Hmm.
But I don't think that's the Christian way to do it. I really don't think so. I think you are obligated to repay your debt. You know, and I don't think that will solve your problem, because people who tend to do that tend to get involved in additional debt anyway down the road. You
Right.
know.
Yeah, and paying off your debts anyhow, it does have a benefit, because it's, as you said, that's one of the factors that goes into that credit score is your debt in comparison to what your income or the cash you have on hand as well. So
Definitely,
as you
definitely.
begin to get rid of those debts and such, that credit score, it does begin to rise.
And not only that, having a good credit score. For example, if you get a credit card and you say that, okay, I want to increase the amount that's on that credit card, having a good credit score give, gives you more credit, which is not which may not be a good thing for most people, but having a good credit score really allows you to get even more credit.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to kind of recap for those who are coming back and such, some of the factors that you gave that kind of go into to credit score,
Yes.
because we discussed that credit, it is your reputation. It is answering the question, are you faithful when you owe and such. So the some of the factors I heard you mention, and one were your payment history. You said, are your debts paid off? Did you pay them off on time? And this is going to account for a large amount of your credit score.
That's
Then you
right.
looked at the amount of money that is actually owed. And then I think you talked about your actual credit history, the length or the amount of
Yes,
time, that you
definitely.
had credit and such. And these were some of the primary factors that you listed when you talked about what builds a credit score.
And Pastor, you mentioned one thing. How do you get out of bad credit? Again, credit counseling, creating that budget. That's the first thing we talked about when we started our program.
Mm-hmm.
That
That's
budget, it goes back there. If you develop that discipline, in creating that budget and managing it, you don't have to. It takes most people 6 months to a year,
mm-hmm.
to get that budget together. Because it's human nature. We're gonna
Right.
overspend here and there, so it takes time. But stick with it. Stick with it, because I'm telling you, it has tremendous benefit.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Simmons. I'm going to share a few words and then we'll leave. But next week, we're encouraging you to get back on, because next week we're talking about the topic of investments. I'm also going to be plugging in. Dr. Simmons actually has an investment club that meets on the last Sundays of each month. And this thing is dynamic. I was learning so much. I've only had the opportunity now to have gone to one. But my interest is peaked, and I'm going to be encouraging you to participate and be a
Yes,
part
indeed.
of that. So that is going to be next week. And as always, one of the things that we encourage you to do is to invite somebody on into church. And the way you do that is by hitting the share button on your screen, and this puts it on to your page that somebody else is able to collect some of the knowledge and wisdom that has come forth from this platform. And also, if you feel like this ministry has been a blessing onto you, you are able to give financially to us. You can do this on Cash App. Our cash tag is $ Temple of Praise SDA Church. You can do it on Adventist Giving. That's www.adventistgiving.org. In the middle block, in that search engine, you type in Temple of Praise SDA Church, Cleveland, Ohio. You can also visit us or mail it in. We're the Temple of Praise Seventh-day Adventist Church. We're located in 1985 Green Road, Cleveland, Ohio. Our zip code is 44121. Again, we thank you so much for coming out on this evening, and we're encouraging you to be back next week because we're talking about the topic that everybody wants to know about, and that's how to make some more money via investments.
Yes,
Thank you
yes,
so much. God
indeed,
bless you.
indeed.
We'll connect with you later on.